Club MAHA live, guys. We're live Wednesday, July 30th. Special guest, Dr. Jay Bernstein in the house. Jay, welcome.
Thank you.
Johnny, welcome. Damo, Billy, how are you doing, guys?
Good to see you guys.
Good to see everybody. How's it growing?
It's growing.
Good. I'm going to press this play
It's growing.
button.
So, yeah, we're gonna kick off immediately tonight with this shot from Susan Menares at what looks like her confirmation hearing. Johnny,
the safety of mRNA vaccine in general.
The FDA has, in the production of the COVID-19 vaccine, had approved the mRNA vaccines as safe and had demonstrated efficacy associated with them.
So you would not be prejudiced from the get-go against such a platform, such a vaccine built upon a platform, whether it's for COVID, flu, for Lyme disease, or anything else?
That is why I have no a priori prejudice against the mRNA platform or any other approach that is being taken to develop vaccines. And that is why we have safety and efficacy standards that the FDA puts in place for any of these medical product trials to ensure that anything that is being developed, we can have the confidence that we can put it in ourselves and our children, our family members.
So then you, as the CDC director, responsible for setting the ACIP agenda, would not shrink from the recommendation of such a vaccine. Would you also recommend that the 17 members be constituted with those who actually have experience with mRNA research and could know both sides of the safety discussion?
Yeah, we absolutely need highly trained scientists and medical professionals to be able to participate in the ACIP meeting. If they don't have deep technical knowledge in mRNA, they have to be able to understand complicated scientific information, and they have to have the temerity to ask questions to make sure that they have clarity of understanding of information that is being presented to them.
Oh, they get me so upset, Kyle. Listen.
Yeah.
These lipid nanoparticles, they're just no good to begin with. Am I right about this, Doc? This is what comes to mind from me.
Well, yeah. I tell you what. This lady is really, to a large degree, just spewing like the party line and not really thinking the problem through at all. I just wanted, people need to just realize some basic stuff about it. And once you realize some basic stuff, you can make some very obvious conclusions, and then you can look in the literature and you can actually see evidence that it's all true. I'll give you an example. So now the Johnson & Johnson, it's a DNA. It goes into your DNA. They use a viral vector and they put it into your DNA. Your DNA then produces basically the spike protein, which is they're calling the vaccine. So that gets into your DNA. Then the messenger RNA one, the Pfizer Moderna. There was a paper published in 2021 that shows that the sequence of those also includes the sequence of an enzyme called the reverse transcriptase enzyme, which they took from the HIV virus. And what that does is it takes the messenger RNA that they're injecting into you. It also the messenger RNA goes into your ribosome in your cell and produces the spike protein. And people, may think that it doesn't go into your DNA, but that reverse transcriptase enzyme that's coded in that vaccine also produces another protein it's a enzyme called reverse transcriptase, and that copies the messenger RNA and puts that into the DNA. And when it's entering your DNA, it enters randomly. There's no way to control where it goes. And so I hypothesized early on when I was being ridiculed as an anti-vaxxer just by questioning it. It's just by saying, let's think about this kind of thing, versus just being told that it's safe and just accepting it without actually thinking the problem through. So at that time, this is what I hypothesized is that, if you think about cancer, there's two different basic paradigms of how cancer happens. There's a system called the oncogene. Now, there was an abnormal gene that just turns on the production of cells. That's one type of cancer. There's another type called the tumor suppressor gene. In other words, we have all these natural genes in our DNA that suppresses our cells from reproducing, which is it stops it from cancer, basically. So I don't know if anybody's heard of the BRCA gene. It's a very common gene that causes breast cancer. It causes other cancers as well, but it's well known for the breast cancer. It's relatively common, and amongst American women and around the world. The BRCA gene is an example of a tumor suppressor gene. Okay, so in other words, it's an abnormal. The woman has an abnormal tumor suppressor gene that they pass along to their offspring, and that tumor suppressor gene is dysfunctional, so that they're more likely to get cancer when the cell goes up. When the cell is dividing, and all of a sudden it hits the tumor suppressor gene that's not working, and then it continues to divide. Right. So a normal tumor suppressor gene, which if we have, many normal ones, millions of them, right? So maybe more, maybe billions. I don't know what the number is, but how do you know that this messenger RNA is not going to go right in the middle of a tumor suppressor gene, right? You don't know that. So I was theorizing that, and lo and behold, it's true. It's been published that there's another tumor suppressor gene called P53, and that has been shown that this vaccine has been shown to enter and disrupt the P53, therefore causing an abnormal tumor suppressor gene, causing cancer. And I can tell you there's an article that was published. I got this. A lot of the articles I look up, I get from Peter McCullough. He's unbelievable. He really is. So this is, I don't know if you can see it. Well, you probably can't see it with my phone, but yeah, actually you can. This article right here published, okay, it was published in 2024, I believe it was December, no, 2023 in December, in a journal called Curious. It's peer reviewed. It's called SARS-CoV-2 Vaccination and the Multi-Hit Hypothesis of Oncogenesis. And what this article shows, it basically goes through, scours the literature. It's a review article, and it's got 255 references. And it shows you that in 7 different ways, this vaccine causes cancer. And one of those ways it mentions is the P53 tumor suppressor gene that has been shown to be disrupted in people with COVID vaccine. So there are 255 references in this article. And by the way, there are more articles that have come out since then showing significant harm from this vaccine. So the messenger RNA platform, okay, is not safe. It's not safe. It's evident. There's evidence in the literature. It's not safe. Period. Just by saying it, she's been told that, but she's just a lackey, like most doctors are. I hate to say it, where they go. You learn a certain body of information in medical school. Go to residency. You learn your craft, whatever it is. Maybe you're an epidemiologist. You learn how to analyze articles, even. But if you're not actually looking at the data yourself in PubMed, then you just believe what people are telling you. Bodies like the CDC or whatever medical boards or whatever organizations are giving their party line, which is corrupt, because they're a lot of it. I can give you many examples if you want of them just parroting, them giving us information that's not true, and everybody else just believes in it because they're good. People are good-natured people. I don't think this lady's a bad lady. If she really believes it, I understand that, because she trusts, the information she's being given. But it's quite obvious this lady has not actually delved into the literature herself. And that's what I do a lot, because this is, to me, it's like I feel like I'm an investigator. I'm just looking at things, and the answers are right in front of us. You know how to find it.
Someone described her as like Fauci with a fresh coat of paint. Nah?
Seems that way, if she, based on what she's saying, yeah.
No, it seems like you kind of mentioned, like this is an example of the legacy pharmaceutically captured kind of industry spokesperson representative continuing that journey, which is really unfortunate, because her position falls underneath Bobby, right, at HHS. Like CDC is subordinate to HHS, and
right.
I don't know if we haven't heard Bobby say much on this, but there's certainly kind of, I think, the sense of betrayal amongst a lot of the people within the health freedom movement.
Well, I think there's a plastic surgeon, Dr. Moore. I can't remember his first name. Kirk Moore, maybe. He set up a clinic for vaccines. He was giving people saline shots, and he was prosecuted, and the case was just dropped like within the past couple of weeks. And when Pam Bondi got involved, and everybody was wondering why they didn't get involved, and I just think it's just a matter of time. I think that if everything doesn't get all done at once, I'm not really holding them accountable yet, because they're moving pretty fast. It's a big country. There's a lot of different areas of corruption that need to be taken down, and they're working on it. I have full confidence that this individual who gave that kind of testimony is not going to last in this government.
I mean, she definitely like comes from and represents the technology side of the, you know, the medical industrial complex too. Like, there's no denying that the mRNA industry, which they're calling vaccines, which I don't think we should even really call them necessarily vaccines, is a big business, and is something that, you know, a lot of people like really believe is part of the future of transhumanism and recoding the human species.
Right. Well, you know, I think the messenger RNA vaccine, I think it's going to go away. There's a lot of really good things we can do with genetics. You know, in other words, and there are hospitals doing this around the world, where people have like a dominant abnormal gene, like Huntington's chorea. So when you have that abnormal gene, you know what the gene is, you have identified, and you have a normal gene. You can actually target it and replace the abnormal gene with a normal gene, and resolve the problem. That's a very good use of this overall in this field. But when you're taking something and randomly just inserting it into your DNA, like that's not just to be able to make a protein that you could just inject into somebody without that technology. It's just not going to work. It's not going to last. I have full confidence that this messenger RNA vaccine technology is going to go away. And the other thing is this. I mean, think about this. I believe it was 2017. There's a paper published that looked at the question that they wanted to answer is, can we make a vaccine using the spike protein for SARS-1? Okay, and now the spike protein is the poison of the virus. So can we inject that protein into people and call it a vaccine? And what they did is to answer the question, they looked at the literature and they reviewed two other paradigms: respiratory syncytial virus, RSV, and group A strep. They get a strep throat. So group A strep, the poison of that organism, that bacteria, is called streptolysin, the streptolysin molecule. So they injected the streptolysin molecule into people, and they injected the poison of the RSV into people, and they found actually no vaccine efficacy, and they found increased death. So they concluded, but you inject this spike protein into people, then you're not going to be successful in making a vaccine. That was a paper that was published. And then to fast forward to 4 years, and they're now getting our own body's machinery to make that same spike protein. And so, and the other thing is that spike protein, if you look at the immunogenicity of this virus, the areas that kill the virus, we call them the neutralizing part of the virus. In other words, when you have antibodies or your cellular immunity attacks the virus, which part of the virus is the most significant in terms of having a killing power? Well, the nucleocapsid is the place on this virus where you can neutralize it the most effectively. The antibodies against the spike protein has very little, if any, ability to the antibodies to neutralize this virus. So they even picked the part of the virus that's not even the neutralizing part of the virus. And not only that, Dr. David Martin clued me in on this topic, on this thing, is that well, first of all, if you look at the patent of the COVID vaccine, and he's the patent guy, right? So he pointed out that the patent they never got approval for a vaccine. They gave them approval for a immune modulating. Actually, I forget the exact verbiage, but basically they called it a chimer, first of all, in that was an immune modulating treatment, something like that, or DNA. And it's a whole long sentence of a definition, but they did not get it. They did not. The definition is not a vaccine. And when it's said, and when the verbiage uses the word chimer, that indicates that this sequence of the vaccine is a different sequence than actually on the virus, the man-made spike protein they put on the virus. Those DNA sequences are different. So not only is it basically, this is all published data. Not only is it is the not the neutralizing part of the virus that we're manufacturing in our own from DNA, which has no hope of really killing the virus, but we're even attacking attacking the virus in a very much weaker way, because the immune reaction you get to the vaccine is not going to be nearly as strong as you're going to get to the virus, because they're two different sequences. They just look stereotactically similar. That's why they call it a chimer. So the whole thing was designed to fail. And by the way, I worked in the ER today, did a 12-hour shift. Okay, I saw a number of COVID patients. It's on the rise again. I saw a number of COVID patients today, at least 3. And I asked every single one of them, "Did you get that vaccine?" "Oh yeah, I got that." One guy, I said, "How many?" This is the sickest one. I said, "How many vaccines you get?" "I don't know. I can't even count. A lot." That's what he said. He was pretty sick, but like it's crazy. You know what I mean? And meanwhile, I haven't had any. I got COVID once, and and I'm taking care of it. I'm interacting with COVID patients whenever the waves come all the time. And that wave, by the way, they're called epicurves. This is another false thing that was given in the news that was people have sold a bill of goods here that was false. I don't know if you've heard of this guy named I think his name is Geert Van Bosch. He's a Belgium vaccinologist. So he was saying something that most doctors are not going to pick up on, because he was saying that right after Israel was a country that was boasting that they vaccinated their most of their country before everyone else, and this was in January, I think, 21. So the cases were coming down. They started vaccinating in January. In early spring, the cases started coming down. So Dr. Van Bosch was doing videos online saying that he was actually crying at one point. Okay. And he has nothing to do with Israel. He's not Jewish. He was crying, and he was saying that I understand. I'm glad that there are less cases, but there are going to be more cases after, because this is an epicurve, and I knew what that meant. Most doctors don't know what that means. An epidemiologist knows what that is. I did a master's in public health. That's why I know what it is. And what it is that anytime you have an epidemic or something that's endemic, and even pandemics, you have basically waves of cases. Okay, and each wave, if you look at the wave like on a graph, there's something called the area under the curve. So in other words, how wide and how big the wave is, that's got a big area if you measure the area. And then so the area under the curve always starts big, and it gets smaller and smaller and smaller. Why? For 2 reasons. Number one, you get herd immunity in the population. Okay, people get immune to it. Number 2, the virus always gets weaker, and that's what we're seeing right now. By the way, this COVID virus is weaker. It just happens to be people's immune system is so weak that they're still getting sick from it. The people who have taken the shots. But anyway, so the epicurves always get smaller, and what he was saying is that this curve's the next time around is going to be bigger because of what we're doing, because we're destroying people's immune system with this vaccine, and that's exactly what happened. And by the way, Dr. Van Bosch and all the vaccinologists and virologists will tell you, you never vaccinate in the middle of a pandemic or epidemic, in the middle of an infection. You have to vaccinate if the vaccines are going to work, if they're a proper vaccine. There is something to the vaccines. I've actually the last 3 weeks I've taken a deep dive into all the other vaccines, and that's a whole other topic. That the harm is much greater than the good, but there is some validity to the concept of a vaccine. It's just that all the excipients in the vaccines are poisoning the population with aluminum and mercury and polysorbate 80 and formaldehyde. Anyway, but so Yeah. So what happens when you're mounting in a population? This
Sorry, just before,
yeah.
when you said the incipients, you mean all the ingredients that are in the vaccines, in addition to like the active component. You're saying there's aluminum, there's formaldehyde, antifreeze, right?
Right. By the way, polysorbate 80, okay, which I just learned this recently because I saw it in the literature. I heard somebody talk about it, and I looked it up. I looked everything up myself in the literature in PubMed. That's the basis of all medicine and science is found in PubMed. That's where everything's published. Google Scholars also has basically the same link to the same database, but this is one database of all the scientific literature. And so I heard that polysorbate 80 increases the permeability of the blood-brain barrier. And lo and behold, it's true. It's in the literature. And polysorbate 80 is in some of the vaccines, and it's in a lot of the foods as well. But and by the way, aluminum that's in the vaccines is clear-cut a neurotoxin. It's actually, aluminum is harmful to every living organism. There's mercury. Mercury is a neurotoxin as well. Interesting that, when they, back in the 90s, there was a whole thing that happened where Congress got involved to look at whether or not thimerosal, which is the mercury, is causing a problem because of all the grassroots. People, like a lot of mothers throughout America, were like basically complaining that their kid got autism from the vaccine. Now, when I was at Hopkins, I learned that that's not true. All the epidemiology studies show that it's not true, et cetera, which is a whole other topic. I spoke with the expert on campus there about it, and I came up with some plausible explanations as to why those epidemiologic studies weren't showing it, and she could not debunk the concerns that I had in terms of they weren't reliable, basically. But in any case, I was sort of, I went through the system, and I know what the talking points are, and I know what their the issues are. So, when I was taught in one of my classes there that this was the only healthcare legislation that was passed based on grassroots, not based on science, right? So it's because the mother, the kid got vaccinated almost, and the mother noticed the kid just changed right after that. So you're like, I know this caused autism in my kid. It happened so much that the Congress had to do something, right? So what they did, they commissioned the I can't remember. There's a certain governmental subsidy section to look into this and to report it to the Federal Registry, and you have 2 years to do it. And they took the full 2 years, and they reported, yes, there is some evidence that mercury, which is a neurotoxin that's in the vaccines, is causing harm. So what they did is they didn't pass any laws. Like I was taught, actually, they passed a law. They didn't pass a law. What they did, they passed a law that the CDC should, they should look into it. And what happened as a result, these governing bodies like the American College of Pediatrics, so a few governing bodies like that made the recommendation to take thimerosal out of the last step of the process and that's where it was being added to the last step. Thimerosal was put in as a preservative, right? So that was why. So as a result, that they took it out. They had to go to in many cases, single vial doses instead of multi-dose vials. That's really all you have to do to avoid that problem. If you're worried about something growing, bacteria, fungus growing in it, you just need to create a single dose vial. Then you don't need the preservative because you can make it sterile. But so what they did though is they took it out of the last step, and instead what they did is put it in smaller doses in the earlier steps, right? And then they increased the vaccine schedule. Okay, they were already increasing it since 1988. So if you have more vaccines in smaller amounts, guess what? Nobody's going to notice it. So you're not going to have parents calling their congressman all the time saying, "I know my kid got autism from the vaccine," and all the people in the industry that are saying, "See, we took the thimerosal out and autism's still going up." It wasn't that. Well, that's because they pulled a fast one. And aluminum is in the vaccine. And I had heard from a few sources. I haven't seen evidence, and I'm not sure I'm going to be able to find evidence, but I had heard that they put more aluminum in the vaccines when they reduced the thimerosal at that last stage. So they actually increased the aluminum, and aluminum is put in for a different reason. Aluminum is put in, these are excipients, by the way, like you talked about, Kyle. So aluminum is put in as an adjuvant. It's different. Okay, mercury or thimerosal is in for as a preservative. Aluminum's in as an adjuvant. And I actually just while during my ER shift, in between patients, I'm reading all about the adjuvants. It was based on in 1932. I can't remember the guy's name. There's a famous researcher, 1932, that what he showed was that when he vaccinated guinea pigs, if he added aluminum, because the reason why he thought to add aluminum is because aluminum sticks around the body. Your body can't get rid of it. It can't eliminate it so fast. So you link it to the vaccine, so the vaccine hangs around longer, so you get more of an immune response. And he's able to show a few weeks, like 7 weeks later, you had a bigger immune response in the people and the guinea pigs that got the aluminum with the vaccine. So in other words, it theoretically enhances the ability of the vaccine to create an immune reaction. That's what an adjuvant is. That's why aluminum's in there. Well, in 1950 and 1955, there were two published studies that were much better studies, okay, showing that's not true, actually. There is no increased immunity at all. And then since then, there's been a lot of studies showing a lot of mechanisms, but basically, there was a study published in 2009 that reviewed all of them up until that point. There are no studies really showing that this theory of an adjuvant is even real, but there's a lot of studies showing that aluminum is very harmful, and this is part of the deep dive I've been taking into vaccines lately. There's so much data out there that these vaccines and half the talk is on all the all the excipients, just generally of vaccinated versus unvaccinated controls, real controls, which means no excipients. But the other half of the talk is about the aluminum studies, and in both situations, including the aluminum, you have demonstrated in very good, well done studies increased risk of autism, increased risk of ADD, increased risk of chronic infections, increased risk of acute infections like ear infections, pneumonia, increased risk of neurodevelopmental problems, neurobehavioral problems. So the data is there. The data is out. It's out. And there were three studies published since January this year. So it's just getting the information out to people, and it's just so amazing that people they just literally ignore the information right in front of their face. I gave it. There was one study. I just left the medical. I was attending in a medical school, and I was teaching. I was in charge of some courses. Then I was in charge of the curriculum. So I just left that position. But about 4 years ago, there was an article that came out in Science. Now, Science is the creme de la creme in the science world. If you publish in Science, you're like top of the field. Okay, it's a very great. It's like New England Journal of Medicine for doctors. But in the science world, Science is great. It's a great journal. There was an article showing that in 2021, that very well done study, that in multiple different ways they were able to show natural immunity from that people get when they get COVID. Okay, is basically by the calculations and various ways they did the study, you basically have like a 90-year immunity once you went. Nobody's been vaccinated. Unvaccinated people, once you get COVID, you have immunity for about 90 years. Okay. And it was published February 2021, Science. So I went like, this is an amazing article. So I was happy to be in charge of Journal Club. Every month we have Journal Club with the residents, and so to give the residents some chance to look at the article, to analyze articles and learn something at the same time. So because I was the attending that month on Journal Club, I get to pick the article. So I picked this one, and the resident who presented it was like really was snide. He presented it, he gave the information, he did a very quick job. But everybody's like rolling their eyes and like they just literally didn't want to accept this information, even though it's right in front of their eye. It's like it's there. It's a great article. It's in a great journal. It's peer reviewed. It's kind of like when I was before that time, we would talk. I was in a meeting with a whole bunch of other directors of the other fields like surgery, pediatrics, OBGYN. I was in a meeting with them, other directors of courses, and then it was also said something similar in a meeting with all the other faculty of emergency medicine. And both different meetings were about a month apart. We were discussing in one meeting, getting the medical students vaccinated, and the other one's getting the residents vaccinated. How are we going to do it? Do we have to require it, or is the hospital going to require it? Somehow we got to make sure that if they're not doing it, we have to do it. So I said in both meetings, I said, well, what about those students or residents that had COVID? Like they have natural immunity. I mean, this study hadn't come out yet, but from what we know of every other paradigm is that natural immunity is always better. Look at chickenpox. There was I remember when I would think it was in college, or maybe in high school. I don't know what it was. Actually, maybe it was after college. But the whole discussion, the debate came out when they made a chickenpox vaccine. When I was a kid, we went and got my mother wanted me to go get chickenpox. I went to my neighbor and we got I intentionally got chickenpox just to have it, because if you have it later in life, it can be dangerous. It's good for a kid to get it. It's a benign illness. And everybody had natural immunity, but and that's lifelong. The debate about the vaccine is once you get the vaccine, it only lasts for 10 years, and you get to get the vaccine every 10 years the rest of your life. So it was a big deal, and I was thinking about it. I'm like, yeah, why would we want to do that? Things are fine. Like why do we need the vaccine if then now you're committed to that. And if you don't get your vaccine when you're 30 or 40 years old, like you forget or something. Okay, then now you're at risk. You're at risk of pneumonia and death. So natural. There are many things you can look at regarding the comparison of natural immunity versus vaccines. And natural immunity is always much better, always. Okay, and so I said that to them in this meeting, and you know what the answer was? Silence in both meetings. They're literally just like these people, like just literally ignoring any rational thought that they would have. There was no discussion.
And what time frame was this, Jay?
This was just before. It must have been before February 2021. It was probably maybe the fall 2000. I think. Let me see.
So I mean, they're like, it's in theory, like, I think one of the reactions why people were like, hesitant was because of like that deep programming that took place around COVID bad, vaccine good, COVID bad, vaccine good, like the fear of the flu, COVID, and
right.
the hope and the solution and the savior in the vaccine, because it was so like the amount of information and propaganda and conditioning that took place, got to the point where it's like you have them, not even you presenting, you have somebody else present this peer-reviewed study showing the power of natural immunity, and they don't want to listen to it. It's as Bobby said, one of his campaign videos was like, it's easier to fool a man than to convince a man he's been fooled.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Twain. It's Mark Twain.
That's Twain. Mark Twain.
Mark
yeah.
Twain.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, Demo.
Yeah.
Oh, hey.
There's the concept is mass psychosis, cognitive dissonance, mob. I don't know. There's another
mentality.
Term. Yeah, basically, it's all really means the same thing, and it's a real phenomenon in humans that, you just latch on to this popular narrative, and you want to believe, and you believe it. You become emotionally attached to it, and it's amazing how powerful it was, and the way that the evil
Well,
people.
and it still is too. There's so many people that are suffering from blood clots and strokes and heart attacks, and there's absolutely no connection, and they're not even willing to entertain any connection between the fact that, up here in Canada, a lot of people took 5, 6, 7, 8 of these things, and they're continuing to. We can't connect the dots. I mean, let's be honest here, folks.
Right. As a good friend of mine that came to visit me right around the time this was all happening, he's from Canada. He came, he stayed at my house and, hung out with me for a week, and I was telling him about all my thoughts, and he thought I was a conspiracy guy. The poor guy took his vaccines. He's got prostate cancer, and he's pretty young, and when you get prostate cancer as a young person in their 50s, that's pretty young. It's usually more aggressive. So he had a whole, chemo, prostatectomy, and everything like that. So the poor guy, I don't know what to say to the guy. I feel like I want to tell him, but I'm not, I just say, how you doing? Whatever. I kind of don't talk about it, but it's pretty sad. Pretty sad.
Can you back up and tell us functionally here the difference between the mRNA shots and the J&J shot?
Sure.
Yeah. Like how does the J&J shot actually work? You mentioned it very briefly earlier, and what are the different implications if someone got the J&J?
I think they're roughly the same. What they do is they take the sequence, which is kind of like the code. The code, it's like a computer code. It's basically in base pairs in a sequence of a piece of DNA, and they put it into a viral vector. I can't remember if it's an adenovirus I forget the other. This another one begins with A. It's one of those two vectors. Anyway, this virus knows to download. It the way it works is it downloads its DNA into you. That's what it does. So they put it into this viral vector, and that vector downloads it into your DNA. So your DNA now has the sequence that codes for the spike protein, and then it copies itself onto a messenger RNA in your cell, a natural one. Then that leaves the nucleus and goes to your ribosome in your cell in your cell cytoplasm, and then your ribosome makes that protein, and it goes. I wouldn't say it leaves the cell, but also it presents itself on the cell too. That's which is another topic, another issue that's a problem that I didn't think about until somebody, I don't know who pointed it out. It could be Dr. Peter McCullough, but I think he's the one that pointed this out. That if you think about that, if you have a foreign protein, right, and it's sitting on your cell surface. I mean, ultimately, the protein, you want it to be your vaccine, right? So your body attacks the vaccine, okay? So then it knows, it learns the shape of the theoretically the spike protein, and then when your virus comes along, when you get a virus, it'll theoretically go to the spike protein on the virus, and you've already developed that immune response, and you can kill the virus. That's the theory behind it. But when you presented it on the outside of your own cells, your body's now attacking your cells, So it's in any case. So that's the Johnson & Johnson was a DNA vector virus, and so the Pfizer and Moderna, they just basically created the technology so that they can put a messenger RNA, which is very unstable, into this lipid nanoparticle thing that can sort of go through your cell membrane, go into your cytoplasm in your cell, and then use your own ribosome to go through that ribosome and produce that spike protein that it coded for. But then, as I said before, then it then copies itself and puts it into your DNA. So then you're able to basically make the same thing from your DNA. So they really both get into your DNA at the end of the day, and so they're equal. They're equally as bad. It's just that probably the viral vector was more efficient. That's why you just needed 1 dose versus 2 doses. Yeah.
I think this kind of sounds pretty out there for a lot of people who aren't aware of all the studies. But I think there's at least 4 peer-reviewed studies that show how this is getting into the DNA. Does that sound right, Todd?
Say again. This force. Yeah, I mean, it's getting into your DNA because it has a reverse transcriptase enzyme. The messenger RNA, the messenger RNA one, that Pfizer Moderna, in addition to coding for the spike protein, it also has another code attached to it that codes for reverse transcriptase. It's an enzyme that once you that copies that same messenger RNA and puts it into the DNA. So yeah, and there's a number of studies showing that. And there's some outcome study showing that it successfully did it. Like there was they did that in liver cells, published I think right around 2022. So.
When you listen to HHS, they talk about how they want to do the science to sort this all out. It seems like there's so many studies showing that this is so dangerous. Is there like a higher threshold of bigger randomized control studies that we need to really prove to everybody that these are toxic, or do we have enough studies? Do we have enough research? What do you think?
I think there is enough out there. The problem is there's a lot of false stuff that's out there too. In fact, in last spring, about a year ago, I believe, roughly a year ago, more than a year ago, a year and a few months ago, there was a well-known lawsuit that Wiley, it's basically it's a parent company for a bunch of journals. They in discovery they were able to show, the plaintiff was able to show that that their journals were corrupt, and they were publishing articles that were not real science. The data was not reliable for various reasons, and the judge basically shut down 19 of their journals. So, and I didn't look at this. I didn't look too much into the case. I suspect. I mean, it happened to be last spring, so like, spring 24. I suspect it was related to COVID. A lot of COVID articles, but there's a lot of things people play. There's a lot of shenanigans that go on within science that you can show things that. You really have to have a discerning eye to know what's really true and not. And there are so many people that are convinced that what they made us think about they made people think COVID's good, and it's hard for people to believe that the government or these governmental agencies would be lying to us. So it's just really hard to change that narrative, and the only way to do it is to do it slowly, because otherwise it's just people can be people. I mean, you're going to wind up having suicides and anxiety conditions, or just people not believing in this information, or it's just too much for people to handle in a population. And I know that the military intelligence and the CIA, they have the PSYOP division, like they know of ways to change the heart and minds of a population. There's certain methods of doing it, and I know that one of the principles is it needs to be done slowly. And a lot of times you need to show people also, but just telling them is one thing. You need to show people. So as time goes on, there are more and more people with vaccine injuries coming out, that kind of thing. It becomes more palatable, more able to be believed. And so people are gradually waking up. And at some point in time, when people are ready, then he'll hit it hard. And I think RFK Jr.'s they're strategizing to do that. I don't know that from the inside. I don't know that for sure, but just from reading the tea leaves, I think that's what they're doing.
And I just want to, you just spoke about the vaccine injured. I just want to take 1 minute and just play this clip of the teaser from Follow the Silence, just to tap into this for a moment.
I'd just like to thank you very much for volunteering for this trial. Vaccine injuries are rare and mild until one happens to you or your loved one.
You cannot walk away from this film and still be questioning that this is true.
There's information that I didn't even know about, and I've been part of this movement for the last 4 years. It's incredible.
Follow the Silenced is really our way of giving the people a voice who were completely silenced for having dared share the fact that they were injured by the COVID vaccines.
My son, my beautiful boy, heard me say to my husband, just let me die. I just need to die.
We really worked diligently to create a film for everyone, no matter where you are in your belief system with this subject.
It's a story of the human spirit. It's that we can really love each other and reach across the aisle and find community.
So it feels really amazing to be able to give them a voice, let their stories be heard.
It's moving, it's hard, it's intense, it's informational, and it's inspirational.
The film was so eye-opening to me.
The pandemic of the unvaccinated was, in fact, a pandemic of vaccine injuries.
That was followed the silence by Mickey Willis, who did the pandemic movies as well. And then like this one speaks directly to, there was an incredible amount of damage, and we have so much primary evidence that took place. And even with all this evidence staring us in the face, like you just mentioned, Dr. J, about like it's going to take an iterative approach, but I mean, what's it really going to take? What do you think? Did you see that movie?
The movie, which movie? The movie you just showed?
Follow the Silenced. Yeah.
Oh no, I haven't seen it. Well, yeah, I don't know. I think, yeah, and the other thing is that it's just so hard for people who have taken the vaccine to hear it. I have very close friends. My two best friends took it, and they're just sick and tired of me talking about it. And I still do, but it's hard for them. You know what I mean? It's hard for people. But it's obviously there's no question the trajectory is going in the direction of people becoming aware of the corruption and waking up, and then as there's a critical mass, I think, of people A, willing to accept, and B, out there providing information, and then as more data is coming in, and RFK Jr. is supposed to be doing this worldwide study, when that comes out also, at some point in time in the very near future, I don't know when it's going to be, a year, 5 years, 10 years, I don't know what it is, it's going to be well known by everyone. It's going to be like smoking. In 1956, when there were two British journals that came up, there were two articles in a British journal that showed that smoking, very well done, that showed smoking causes cancer. And that should have woken up everybody in science. And it took a couple decades really for people to finally wake up. So I don't think it's going to take that long this time. I really don't. Things are moving like a freight train. That's what I think. I mean, I talk to patients all the time.
I hope so. And I certainly in talking to other people who regret taking it, I just try and give them hope that they just took saline. Because I don't know about you. Do you think there was a large percentage of the administered doses were simply saline?
I'm pretty confident there were some. I don't know what the percentage is. Yeah, but I don't know. And here's the kicker here. That really, this is one thing that really aggravates me. If I want to order a test of the spike protein, to see if because if people have had the virus, you're not producing spike protein anymore. Like 10 days, the virus is out of your system. You may have antibodies that'll last for decades, but you're not going to have the spike protein anymore, right? So why isn't it clinically available to be able to measure the spike protein in a patient in a clinical setting? We can't do it. I called a number of companies around the world have the assays to do it, but they will only let me do it if I'm a research lab and I'm a researcher.
swear I've been seeing posts just over the last couple of days. I can't remember which account's been posting about this, but that LabCorp and Quest both have a spike protein test that you can get without a doctor's note.
If that's the case, it's brand spanking new, because I investigated about 2 weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
I called LabCorp, I called Quest, they didn't have it. I called, and then I found labs, that research labs, and I even lied and said, yeah, I'm a researcher. You know, what university? I told them the university I'm affiliated with, and then they basically somehow figured out that I was not telling the truth. I was just like, I wanted to see if I could just get some tests, you know, and because I had some, you know, I knew some people that they needed to be tested, you know, because what was going on with them. There's so many things happening right now with people's health, crazy stuff, you know, that it's very likely that these are all these are all vaccine related injuries.
So what you were saying there was that if you had natural immunity, your body would produce a spike protein and then it would stop doing that. But with
10 days.
injections,
Yep.
with the injections, your body's just going to keep making them. Like every booster, you're just constantly producing something that you don't need, which is going to provide imbalance to your whole system.
Yeah, big time. And you know what? Let me tell you something. It's not just theory either. And there's a well-known paradigm. Any doctor who might be watching this, I want you to think about something. Think about something called the ASO titer. Everybody knows about it. What the ASO titer is in very high antibody levels to group A strep. So when people have strep throat, if they need to be treated for strep throat, if they're not treated, if you have untreated strep more than 9 days, you're at risk of rheumatic heart disease and something called Sydenham's chorea, which is a neurologic disorder that could be permanent for life. I know a patient who got it. It's a long story. I was trying to help the person. You know, their kid got it at the age of very young. Pediatrician didn't do the strep test, and the kid has to be on penicillin shots once a month for, one cardiologist said, the rest of her life. One said until she has kids. But in any case, the streptolysin is an antibody you mount against the group A strep, right? So, but the strep is able to avoid your immunity enough for it to continue to grow in your throat. But you get this massive immune globulin that causes other problems. You have really high immune globulins. That's not good. And in addition to causing Sydenham's chorea and rheumatic heart disease in this scenario, there's a well-known paradigm. There's a well-known concept in vaccinology called antibody-dependent enhancement. And antibody-dependent enhancement means if your antibody levels are too high, that actually will help the virus enter your cell more efficiently. So skyrocketing high antibody levels are not good. And when Fauci was saying that, I was like, I was looking at like this guy. It's amazing how he can say these things that are not true. You know, he censored all the vaccinologists, virologists, and immunologists, and the ones, except for the ones working the ones working the government or doing his bidding. But all the ones that are out that have been out there that are talking, that are giving truth, and who understand it, they weren't able to, get their voice heard. But he was saying, if you get your booster, your antibody levels are higher and higher and higher. He's basically telling people, I'm harming you. I want you to be harmed blatantly if you understand it. But most doctors don't understand it because you don't learn that level of depth of vaccinology and immunology in medical school or college. You just don't.
So Dr. J, is this on the screen here? Is this the kind of test that you were describing?
No, so this is an antibody test. So the antibody, actually, hold on a second. What you want to know is you want to know the spike protein. So, for example, like if somebody has had the virus and they didn't have the vaccine, you expect to have antibody levels, and you'll have the antibodies for life if you have a normal immune system. You don't even need to check them, but that's what this is checking. But what you want to know is somebody who has had the vaccine, are they still producing the spike protein? Okay, because high levels of the spike protein is the poison of the virus.
Sure.
If that's being produced, and all the symptoms they're having could be caused by that. And the reason why you'd want to know that is because there's a treatment. There's bromelain kinase and turmeric that will degrade this spike protein it's not gonna eliminate the DNA from manufacturing it, from producing it, but in most cases it's getting less and less over time. So if somebody's producing it, say for a year, okay, it would be better for them if you could take the spike protein treatment, like the Wellness Company has one that has all in one. You can get it. You can buy them individually from supplement stores. But whatever the case is, you can at least decrease the spike protein while it's being manufactured. You can check theoretically if you can check the levels of the spike protein. Then maybe when they go down to a certain level, you can stop taking the medicine, that treatment, and you're good to go, and you've done yourself a service. That should be out there. If anybody, yeah.
Theoretically here, like Dr. Mary Tally Bowden here specifically says she likes the LabCorp test over the Quest because it is a 10 times higher limit on how many antibodies it's checking for. And I'm just wondering, like, theoretically, if your body is still producing the antibodies or still producing the spike protein, so you've still, let's say you haven't had COVID in like 2 years, but you've had several boosters, your body is producing a bunch of spike protein. Would that in theory show up in one of these tests as a higher load of antibody?
Yeah, you could infer that if they
like,
have,
I know that's not
boost,
like a for sure because it's not a direct.
It's an indirect way of doing it. It's the best we have. You know, if you see you see really high antibody levels, okay. But what if that person, like say myself, who's not been vaccinated, right? Let's just say I get COVID, right? Because I saw a few patients today. Maybe I picked it up, but my antibody levels taking care of business, right? I'm not sick because my antibody. I mean, your immune system is not a force field. It still goes into your body, and the virus tries to set up shop. You kill it, your antibodies goes up. They check me, and I'm going to have high antibody levels. So I don't know. It's better to. Why we can't have a clinical test available is that's the deep state corruption right there. Right there. That's an example of it.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Speaking of deep state corruption, like how does one actually test to know they have COVID, Dr. J?
That's a good question. These COVID tests were pretty shady. I mean, we had almost no cases of influenza that year. You know, it's like, you know, how could that be? Oh, because of social distancing, which didn't work, because of the masks that didn't work. You know, like that's ridiculous. You know, we had COVID cases that went everywhere, right? So social distancing didn't stop that.
But like the test itself, like, you know, because like morphing back in time, it was everybody was like having their nasal passages abused by these long things and going through this weird ritual. And then it was like, you know, the PCR test, which was coming back as positive or negative result, right? And like there was all the talk and the debate, and like I know, you know, I'm pretty sure David Martin spoke about it. It was like, you know, this isn't a pandemic. This is a case-demic. Like they can literally, because of the way the PCR works, like they can tune it. You can have everybody have it or nobody have it based on the sensitivity.
Well, that's the other thing. The PCR, there's a number of revolutions in the test. So they set it at 40. So they ramped up the revolution so that you get more cases. And all you're looking at is DNA fragments, right? That's all you look. That's not acute infection. And I remember saying it when we were being forced in the clinical setting to like do a PCR test. It's like, well, PCR doesn't confer active infection. You know, like everybody knows that. You need to get the antigen test. And by the way, some of these swabs had straight up carcinogens. And some of them even said it on the swab. It was an epoxy. Epoxy is a well-known carcinogen. It tells you the epoxy. I can't remember exactly what epoxy was. It was a certain type of epoxy. Epoxy is a chemical part of a chemical structure within a chemical. But it had an epoxy. It tells you that and may cause cancer. And we're using this thing to put into our nose, right? I mean, you know, my daughter was going to college and she was in pre-med, and in order for her to go to she refused to take the vaccine. So in order for her to go to school, she had to get the test once a week. And I told her not to do it. She's like, well, this is where I draw the line. I need to go to school, you know? And so, but you know, crazy. It's the
Yeah, I mean
corruption.
that like comes down to the root of the whole thing too. It's like, there's a lot of kind of inconsistencies, and even to this day, when you say like, I had 3 people that, what was the difference? Like, what those 3 people that you saw today that you say have COVID, like, what would you have said 5 years ago? Like, what would they have had? The flu?
Oh, you mean before COVID came out, like before 2020?
Before COVID was part of
You have some
the
viral infection because they clearly have some viral infection. We didn't find any bacteria, although he had one guy, the sickest guy, had an infiltrate in his X-ray, which we would call a pneumonia, but he had no white blood cell count elevation, no fever. So like that density would be called a pneumonia, although it would be there would be all different opinions by doctors saying, well, it's not pneumonia because they're not, there's no white count, no fever. Other doctors say, well, you don't have to. It really depends on the immune system of the person, that kind of thing. So but we're seeing a lot more of that now. We're seeing a lot more of these pneumonias that are not presenting like classic bacterial pneumonias, and they're clearly viral pneumonias and or COVID. And the other thing is that there's something called an opportunistic infection. What that means is that so for example, when people I teach, it's a classic board question for like a medical board, depending what level you're at. But what's the most common cause of death from influenza, which is a virus? The answer is a bacterial infection. What type? Staph aureus bacterial pneumonia. That's the most common cause of death. 90% of deaths are caused by bacterial pneumonia, and most of those are Staph aureus of a certain type. Why is that? So it's because your body's so overwhelmed fighting this virus, it leaves itself open for an opportunity. That's why I call it opportunistic, for another organism to come in and attack you and win the battle against your immune system, because your immune system's fighting something else. You become susceptible. It's called an opportunistic infection. Happens to be, I've just noticed, I haven't seen it published, but it's it's so common. I think everybody kind of knows it, that it's common knowledge that the opportunistic infection you see with this COVID virus or other viruses. You see a lot of other viruses come in, coming in when, at the same time. You can have influenza.
I remember back in the day, Paul Stamets was talking about the cytokine storm, and how when people were getting in the early days were getting the COVID, their bodies were overreacting, and were leading to lungs filling up with fluid, and oh no, now let's ventilate, and next thing you know they're dead, and you've got another COVID mortality. And he actually reached out to me and others to try and bring the fact that, hey, my mushroom solutions can help bring balance and harmony towards one's immune system, so it doesn't overreact and go into the cytokine storm, which would stop the ventilation. And I remember hearing that, and he had done some testing with a couple of the large universities, and I thought, wow, this is incredible, Paul. The heads of the state need to hear this. This is the solution to this. And so I did a little bit of effort, trying to connect dots there. And nobody wanted to listen at all. No. They just no response, no listening. Didn't matter if you had a solution, because the solution was conveniently a press conference was held, I think, the next day, to announce $200 million in vaccine research. In partnership in Canada, it was in partnership with the Chinese, and that was the direction. This was never going to be solved by anything other than an injection, in my opinion.
Right. Well, the doctors are all and I was one of those doctors, just brainwashed into thinking the only solution is pharmaceuticals. The only solution is, I was going to try to pull up a YouTube that I made, but and put the link in there. But this solution of pharmaceuticals only is just not true. And it took me a long time to break out of that brainwashed mindset. And how I did that is this article I was showing you with my cell phone. One of those 7 ways it causes cancer is the vaccine decreases something called toll-like receptors. Toll-like receptors then decreases interferon. And then I'm like, what? Toll-like receptor? A lot of this information in this article is like, is just a lot of new stuff because stuff's coming out so fast. My basic science is kind of like a little bit outdated. I had to look stuff up. But interferon's been around for a while. I know a lot about interferon. That was around. I took in an immunology class in college and this and that, and I know about it clinically. So I'm like, what kind of? So I know about the vaccine affects your interferon. It plummets your interferon. Okay, so interferon's good. We know interferon's good in medicine because, well, first of all, I looked this up. Interferon alpha costs $11,000 a dose in the hospital. Actually, a treatment. What does that mean? I couldn't figure out what that is. I called the pharmacist. She didn't know. Anyway, what a treatment is. Anyway, cost interferon beta is $22,000 a treatment, right? So, and so interferons, it's a very powerful drug. It can cure hepatitis B and hepatitis C. Hepatitis A and E, those are just self-limited. You get them and they go away. The injections we're giving 1-day-old babies, hepatitis B, okay, that's actually curable with interferon, okay. Now, what interferon is part of your own immune system. It's not an antiviral medicine. It doesn't attack the viral DNA like some other antivirals do, right? It actually just boosts your immune system. It adds a component of your immune system that normally fights infection and fights cancer, by the way. So I'm like, And the other thing is that it's used for a number of different cancers when they fail chemotherapy. What they would do de novo to treat cancer, even before, instead of chemotherapy, we don't know because nobody's tested it. But in any case, it helps improve outcomes in multiple sclerosis. It's a powerful drug, expensive drug. So I just said, I went into my database called Up to Date. It's like probably the most common database of all clinicians in this country, probably in the world. And I said, well, what can a natural way to treat, a natural way to increase interferon? And what came up, the first article that came up is garlic. Garlic, that's interesting. So like, I looking into garlic. Well, there was a part, the first article I looked at, published in 2007, showed that you can increase your interferon alpha levels by 5 times just taking 2 grams a day for 7 days. And by the way, then I got into the other topic, which is glutathione. Now, you've all heard of free radical oxidation, right? The free radical. Have you heard of that? Everybody's like, I want to take an antioxidant, right? An antioxidant like vitamin E, vitamin C, vitamin D. So the antioxidants fight free radicals. Okay. So they're called in medicine. They're called reactive oxygen species, ROS. They're bad. Well, our body has these other molecules called RSS, reactive sulfur species. The reactive sulfur species neutralize the reactive oxygen species. That's how we fight the damage in our body. So, and lo and behold, garlic increases your glutathione levels. Glutathione is the most prominent reactive sulfur species in your body. So you're increasing your glutathione levels, you're increasing your reactive sulfur species, the dominant one, and you're increasing your interferon. Wow, that's huge. That it's unbelievable. And by the way, just see what I made recently. See, this is garlic and honey, and you know how it's ready is at the very top. It gets watery because if you look at the chemical reaction that happens is in garlic. What happens in garlic? It has this component called allen and an enzyme called allanase. Okay, and this is all published data, by the way. So a great article from South Africa that looked at published this. A number of other articles showing the same thing. But so when you they're in different compartments in the garlic. When you crush it or you chew it, okay, then you mix the allen and the allanase, and that produces allicin. And allicin, that's the sulfur pungent smell one. Then that sits around in honey. It creates 13 more molecules that stimulate your immune system. And these
you let it hang out in the honey.
Yeah. And that's what's responsible for for your interferon alpha going up and interferon beta going up too. By the way, and also nitric oxide as well. You know, people take that's a big thing in the healthcare in the health world now. Nitric oxide. I don't think I would try supplements of that because I don't know what else is in it, whatever. But garlic increases your nitric oxide too, and your glutathione. And how you know it's ready, because the chemical reaction produces water. So I know, like, you know, some basic chemistry here. Oh yeah, it's watery. Now I think it's done. So then
just take a spoonful a day, or what do you do?
Huh?
You just take.
I take it every day. Yeah, I take it every day, and I feel great. And I take also ginger too. Ginger's also ginger for that. And
yeah, I do ginger and fresh turmeric tea like every single day.
Right, but the key thing that. The key thing is that, you know, so the group here, and probably a lot of people, they'll believe in this stuff, but how many of the doctors are going to believe it? You know what? It's published data in PubMed. It's actually science. There's articles showing improved memory and cognition in multiple studies. You taking ginger, you take, and it goes, and there's a dose response. You get, you know, 400, 800 milligrams of ginger over 2 months. You can improve people's memories and cognition. And it's so this is published data. It works. And so the big pharma, you know, when their intervention with the Rockefellers in the turn of the century, when they basically put the kibosh on natural medicines, they created and they influenced the medical school curriculums. They brainwashed everybody into thinking the chemicals man engineers is the solution to your health. And the reality is, there's so much better. Right. All there. I mean, if you go to a doctor, you say, "Hey, doctor, what can I do to decrease the likelihood of getting cancer?" You know, so-and-so had cancer in my family. He's going to say, if he's a smart doctor, say exercise, which actually does. That's been proven. If he's not a smart doctor, he may say, there's nothing you can do. You just got to you know, take your chances in life. Well, guess what? Ginger, garlic decreases. There's a lot of data for that. It decreases the likelihood of getting cancer and many other things too, by the way.
Yeah, here modified citrus pectin is near the top of the list.
Right. Yeah.
Switching gears a little bit. Like, I just, you know, we said Rockefeller influence, placed information, like shaped Western medicine, if you will. But now we're in this unbelievable age of information. And I, like, after you said interferon, I just went on Grok and I was like, how do I boost interferon? And bro, it gave like a huge page of results. I was like, oh, garlic and honey. And again, huge page of results mentioning everything that you were just saying. So it's like, you know, the power of, you know, the AI in health. You know, are you using these tools in your day? Do you see, like, can these tools help potentially, I don't know, counteract the established dogma of Western Rockefeller medicine pharmacology?
Yeah. I mean, I'm using AI a little bit, but the reality is you need to get down and dirty, and you need to read the articles yourself. I mean, you can get AI to summarize it for you, but I like to then, you know, you always have questions.
You're going to primary sources.
Yeah, I mean,
most people don't have tons of primary sources. That's one of the issues.
Or the expertise to understand what they're reading. It's dense. Right. It's dense information.
Right. Indeed. Yeah. And we need like, I'll call them validators or oracles operating alongside the AI to validate, you know, some of these things and to label data as well towards, because like I'll say this is basic, like, you know, this is early days of where we are, and it seems like it's incredibly powerful, which it is. But, you know, where we get to with the combination of AI and medicine, and I just don't think that, you know, there'll probably be the Western medicine, there'll be the pharmacology, you know, AI doctors, and there'll be the holistic AI doctors as well. Like, you know, you'll be able to honestly get different personas based on deep knowledge and deep reference, you know, answering questions, because, you know, someone goes to the Dr. J's place of work today, and, you know, like, they may have to wait around a couple hours to see the man. But you know,
I'm a little more hopeful in terms of like in the future. I think because information is so widely available, but also with this current administration we have, they're destroying the infrastructure of those that are censoring. So once that's gone, then it's all there's not going to be any more in the future doctors who are going to hang on to this pharmaceutical narrative, because it's all going to be out there. It's going to be available because the only reason why, like this, Johnny sent me this this thing to watch, this family practice doctor who was having these interviews with people. I actually watched it, and it was just I mean, the guy's such a drone. He's such a drone. He's been given all the the information. It's like a computer put this information in his brain, and he can't go outside that. And that's the way the doctors are. But once that cocoon of knowledge that he's been given becomes porous, and things start to leak in, it's all going to be.
We did a show. Our last show, I think, was with Frank Ricotta from Burst IQ, talking about the decentralization of data and how, like, this notion of owning your own data and being able to selectively, effectively share it can lead to all sorts of breakthroughs, because the current system has a lot of gatekeepers and boundaries and walls and processes in place that in theory are there to protect privacy, but in reality are kind of create what we call barriers to entries in, like, competitive business. And I want to share quickly, or I want to speak. You just spoke about someone who just droned on. This man does not drone on. He's not a droner oner. He is one of the absolute ultimate speakers of our time. And here's him talking about how we're going to kill the clipboard. Let's hear what he has to say.
For decades, America's healthcare networks have been overdue for a high-tech upgrade, and that's what we're doing. The existing systems are often slow, costly, and incompatible with one another. But with today's announcement, we take a major step to bring healthcare into the digital age, something that is absolutely vital. We got to do it. Moving from clipboards and fax machines into a new era of convenience, profitability, and speed, and frankly, better health for people. Under the leadership of Administrator Oz, we're officially launching the CMS Digital Health Tech Ecosystem to give healthcare providers, insurers, and software companies the tools they need to empower Americans with a 21st century experience on health. The key breakthrough we've made is getting many of the biggest names in the healthcare and technology to agree to industry-wide standards for electronic medical records. All of those great companies that you just heard have gotten together with this group of very brilliant people. I don't know who's more brilliant, them or them. I don't know. Could be them. I hate to tell you. It could very well be them. But I don't know. I'm going to take my team. But the key breakthrough we've made is getting many of the biggest names in healthcare and technology to agree to that those standards of electronic medical records that we talk about and you've heard about for so many years, and now it's happening. This will allow patients to easily transmit information from one doctor to another, even if they're different networks and using different record-keeping systems. No matter what system they use, they're all transferable. The new standards will also make it simple for patients to access their own personal health records. I don't want to see mine, please. I don't want to see. I don't know about you. They have all sorts of things, sir. They can tell you exactly what your problem is going to be in 6 years. We can do it. They have all these different things. I don't know if they work or not, but I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to hear it. If they got a problem, I don't want to know about it right now. But it is amazing what they're doing. I don't know. Does it actually work? Can they do that? All right. Well, then I'm glad I said I don't want to know. But thanks to this announcement, healthcare providers across the country will also finally be able to kill the clipboard. It's an expression that's used, capital, with a capital C, kill the clipboard. Instead of filling out the same tedious paperwork at every medical appointment, patients will simply be able to grant their doctors access to their records at the push of a button. Just a button and you're all set, and all the information the doctor needs will be immediately transmitted. The system will be entirely opt-in, and there will be no centralized government-run database, which everyone is always concerned about. I'm less concerned than anybody. I say whatever it is, it is. But people are very, very concerned about the personal records. They want to keep them very quiet, and that's their choice. I think it's a great thing because it'll be absolutely quiet. Instead, doctors and patients will always remain in control. The benefits to millions of Americans will be enormous. We will save time, we will save money, and most importantly, we'll save lives. It's just going to make people live longer and be a lot healthier. I think that's really what you're looking to do. And now I'd like to ask Secretary Kennedy to say a few words, followed by David Sachs, Dr. Oz, and Amy Gleason.
That's great. It is going to be a great thing we can access when they all integrate, because you go to one health system and another, you can't get records on people. Even in the system I'm working at right now, which is I'm sort of just working at this, I call it a moonlighting job. It's a part-time gig I have in Florida. The system I work at is so horrible. Even within the same system, I can't get records from another hospital, even within the same electronic medical record. It is crazy.
Yeah, I can't believe how many times I've had to fill out the same intake form about, family history and have you had any of these 57 different conditions, and it feels less secure to me to have to fill that same form out over and over and over again than knowing it's in sort of a HIPAA compliant database that I have control over and access to.
It's also just people don't tell the truth either. Like oftentimes,
interesting point.
Filling out forms.
Yeah, doctor is one of the few people that I absolutely, like, authority figures that I absolutely will not lie to. Like,
do you smoke? Oh, hell no.
Well, I mean, I avoid telling untruths to a doctor, especially about anything I might actually have a concern about. But I'm also pretty cautious about whether I trust what they kick back at me based on what they've heard, right?
How about that line where Trump said, he like a centralized thing? That sounds fine to him.
Yeah, whatever it'll be. It's like, what? Come on, man.
Oh, man.
Come on, man.
Just,
what?
Something else. But I would like to hear what Bobby had to say about that and Dr. Oz. And it's interesting to see that this is happening underneath CMS. And it would be I'd be interested to hear what Frank has to say because of the emergent standards for this. And it didn't sound like, based on at least those words, which obviously were written for him because he was reading them, it didn't sound like it was going to be a patient-centric data ownership. It was still going to the ownership will still lie with the various providers or doctors, but in a standards-driven environment. So we'll see.
I guess we'll see. That's really details. Always is.
Yep.
Boys, it's just about my bedtime, you guys.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like we covered a lot here. Dr. J, is there anything else So I have a question because one of my friends is Tommy Redwood, who's Lynn Redwood's husband, and he was an ER doctor, and he didn't take the vaccine, and he got fired and shamed and attacked as a result. You said you didn't take it. Did you experience similar consequences based on your decision to not go with the directive?
Yeah, I did it. I did it a little bit differently. I took a different approach because rather than, part of it, my at the time, the way I decided to do it is, rather than make a stand, I just kind of it's kind of like a keto. Like, instead of, blocking the punch, you let the punch go through, and you go, you attack the person with their own momentum. So I'm just going to tell you now publicly, I got fake vaccines. That's what I did.
All right.
And I had a couple of friends who thought it was unethical. I said, you know what? And they didn't want to get the vaccine. I said simply, this is a lie, and I think it's ethical to try. Right? I'm treating. So I kept my job. I kept a low profile, even though I was new anti-vaxxer somehow, and a lot of people I worked with, a lot of nurses and stuff, knew that, and probably some residents I worked with probably knew my vaccine wasn't real. But and by the way, one of the ways I got it.
You weren't the only one.
Well, I had another friend who was a nurse practitioner. I got him one of the fake vaccines, and he was so upset later with himself because he just felt, he was a very good Christian, and he thought it was lying is the wrong thing. I shouldn't have done it. He was beating himself about it, and I'm like, the whole thing's corrupt. I don't see anything morally wrong with that, Interesting that there was a friend of mine who has a friend who was a doctor, a primary care doctor, and he was giving out fake vaccines to people. So just small select people. We went to hours.
So, Dr. J,
but this guy believed in the vaccines.
Damo, is he breaking up for you too?
Yeah, he's breaking up a little bit.
Dr. J, the internet does not want you to tell this side of the story.
It's getting the same vibe.
I think I'm feeling it. We're feeling it. Yeah, man, we've had some internet issues today.
Sure have.
But it's been pretty good. Look, Dr. J, I don't think he's just holding his finger like that.
No, I doubt it. Yeah, I think we have locked up.
No, just going like this.
Oh, there he is. He's back. Yes.
Can you hear me?
You're still choppy.
Video is still choppy. It's probably a sign.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Probably.
All right. Well, let me just tell this story real quick, and then maybe we can close out because it's getting late. This just a really quick story. This guy, this doctor was giving out fake vaccines. He believed in it himself, right? So what he was doing is he was actually injecting himself with extra vaccines. I mean, I shouldn't smile because it's really sad, but the guy died. He died of some very, very, very rare, unusual neurologic infection. Very strange. And I'm sure it was because his immune system was destroyed from all the vaccines he took. But that's what he's doing. Yeah. He took mine.
Why was he injecting himself with them?
He took yours.
He believed that his doctor friend should have a choice, but he was like, you know what? You don't want yours? I'll take one. But he believed the narrative that it's going to help him.
What?
Pretty crazy.
But as a doctor, he went with if one's good, then more is better.
Yeah, that's how dumb doctors can be. Seriously, it's true.
God, that's wild.
I had a close friend in medical school. His father was a doctor. Okay, he was a cardiologist. He owned the big practice. And my friend in medical school was telling me doctors are so dumb. They're so stupid because he heard it from his father, right? And I'm like, what are you talking about? We're smart. We're in medical school, But now I realize what he was talking about.
Yeah, I mean, smart people can be really, really dumb.
Right.
Yeah, it's ironic, but it's important. The cognitive security of recognizing that if you are smart, you might be liable to fall for your own blind spots. You might miss stuff because I'm smart. Why would I miss it? But that lets your guard down.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, Dr. J, it's been really, really interesting chatting with you, man. I appreciate you coming on with us.
Yeah, my pleasure. Anytime. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, this is great. All right, man. Well, thank you so much for sharing, and to everybody who tuned in today, we're back.
Thanks for hanging out with us.
We're
right.
here. Let's do this again next week. Let's keep on top of things, and let's stay healthy, and let's try and integrate everything that we learned here into being more healthy and towards raising the health vibration. Yes,
I'm about to go throw some garlic and honey right now.
All right. That's it. I'm into that one.
Go fishing.
There.
All right.
Alrighty.
Honey and garlic together.
That's
Inferior
right.
on.
Let it sit until you get a little water on top. Then you know it's ready to roll.
Right. Alrighty.
Thanks, you guys.
All right.
Have a good
Bye,
night.
everybody.
Mwah.
All right. And thanks, Damo. Dude, that guy's awesome. It was really swell convo.
Yep.
Bass.
Got a little play, outro, and end stream button. Is that the deal?
You're gonna play outro and stream. Head
MAHA, adapting ancient traditions into remedies for modern living.